Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. It is barely Wednesday, May 18th. I stayed up basically all night last night and well into the morning messing around with programming, which I really shouldn't have been doing. I am kind of making enough progress on the Fusion Festival here for it to matter, but yeah, staying up, running into some really weird problems as far as the implementation of the storage experimental plugin in MakeCode with the Circuit Playground Express. This is all extremely technical, but like it just does not really want to work. As far as having a text file and having somebody be able to write to that text file and then recognize that somebody has modified that text file and read that new setting in that new value into a setting. I did play, obviously, a little bit more, but I think the Fusion Festival also just added a second set of quests halfway through, which is an interesting thought, certainly, to just make sure people don't burn through all the quests at the very beginning and then forget about it after the fact. Let's see if we have another Duel Spectate Live. We may not. I may have missed one there. I also think as far as login bonuses, I've almost certainly missed a couple days and I don't know how that really has happened. But we can see we're getting back to being at 10,000 again. Hey, we're having network trouble again. Which, yeah, I don't get what the deal with that is. But I have seen that, like, my network connection, in particular, on the back of my computer, is orange when it should be a green LED, I think. But that may just be my old PC, too. Because I know my old PC had a LED on the motherboard, and for the longest time I kept thinking it was on my new motherboard that there was an LED built into the circuit board, but yeah. We're having like 50% frame drops to start with, and I think the percentage will start to go down. So yeah, whenever I finally did get around to actually waking up, I didn't run into problems with feeling dizzy when I first woke up. I don't know if that's just because I hadn't eaten much in the past 16 hours or if it's just heat exhaustion. I think it may very well be heat exhaustion as a problem. And so then I went back to sleep for another couple hours, and then that when I woke up again, I was dizzy. Let's see. Let's see what happens if I run the Windows. Troubleshooting. Nothing. Yeah. See, it says it is connected with like 1 gigabit. 1 gigabit network connection. I guess we could run a speed test and try to see if that does anything. Let's see. Speed test. I don't know if I really should be using Ookla's speed test, but whatever. And see if that points out any problems. It says it's 3 millisecond ping, about 370 megabits per second download speed. And about 370 megabits per second upload speed. So, yeah, not really sure what the deal is with these connections that they're dropping so many network frames. They really shouldn't be messing with like settings as it's going. Well, actually, it's all blacked out anyway, so I couldn't do it anyways. Don't have a replay buffer enabled. Do I have the 30-second streaming delay? Yeah. Estimated memory usage 24 megabits for 30 seconds. Yeah, it doesn't really feel like there's anything wrong with anything. In that other stream that was having stream networking troubles, also kind of looked fine when I went back and looked at it for half a second. Let's see, FreeBSD is upgraded to a release of 13.1. That's computer nerd stuff. Ooh, this is interesting. The use of this new Rydo U2F hardware authenticators have been enabled in SSH using new public key types as far as elliptical curve DSA SK and elliptical curve 25519 SK. ZFS has been upgraded to OpenZFS version 2.1.4. And now they're using EUFI instead of BIOS, legacy BIOS, to boot up. That being said, I believe TrueNAS has a new version, TrueNAS Scale, that is not even using FreeBSD anymore, so so there's not really the greatest of reasons that you would use FreeBSD, in my opinion. It does seem like that there might have been a point in which that would have made sense, but interesting. I'm going to put a counter on this guy, and that's potentially only going to help this guy. He wants counters. I should have put a counter on this guy. Yeah, I played pretty poorly there. Suffice it to say, just being dizzy and not having slept enough, there's going to be a weird stream. And as far as the accountability section, I've already gone through it, basically saying I've been feeling sick and been programming. The problem with the make code programming seems to be that without jumping through a lot of hoops, you really can't copy a file over to a file or rename or move a file. And you have to kind of jump through hoops to read a file and write a file. It's just like every single thing that should work completely out of the blocks doesn't really work unless you have some fairly hard-coded things. It seems like what happened here is they tested it for one scenario where you would have a hard-coded string of text called log.txt. You could write something to that log, and that's it. They really didn't think about actually reading from that log or modifying what is in that log, or having an array of different files, which is what I'm trying to do, and work with arrays or work with the other kinds of things that in this JavaScript-based language of programming should just work out of the box, no questions asked. They really just, it just doesn't seem like it has that amount of experimenting and testing on it. Second Dinner, the company owned by Ben Brode and started by Ben Brode, has a new game announcement tomorrow. This is the Marvel collectible card game, almost certainly. It would be very weird if all of a sudden this wasn't a Marvel collectible card game. That being said, this does not look like a collectible card game at all. So this teaser, I have to assume, is not really going to be informative at all of what the actual experience is, unless for some weird reason they end up releasing some other kind of Marvel game and it's not a collectible card game. And while that would be hard to believe, it kind of wouldn't be a terrible thought if it wasn't a Marvel collectible card game, because then I could stick with Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, which we're having fun with Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel right now. So it's gonna kind of suck if at 10 a.m. tomorrow they announce the Marvel collectible card game, and then I've been saying for months that if that goes day one that comes out, I'm gonna play that. So it would kind of suck to end up having to stick to my word and abandon a decent experience that we're already having. I don't know what I'm doing here, but I don't think I'm winning. This may very well be more of a case that that they're just going to announce the game and it's still going to be 6 months away. Or it may come out in a very beta state with not a lot going there. They also said their website keeps crashing, so there's something to that. Certainly to think about as far as the level of enthusiasm. For collectible card games, it is kind of a weird scenario where you're gonna say 2 collectible card games are out and are fairly successful at the moment, so we really don't need yet another successful collectible card game. I mean, Magic Arena is not blowing anybody out of the water, and Hearthstone's not doing anything amazingly great, but certainly Master Duel is shockingly successful. It might be a very weird situation too if we jump over, which we still would, we jump over to the Marvel card game and then realize that the Marvel card game is like full of microtransactions, and that Disney has just made a product that is going to ruin it. Hearthstone was pretty generous, even though it did definitely have microtransactions, and every collectible card game would, but they were pretty generous about how they did things. But if all of a sudden that's not the case with the Marvel card game, that would be something to consider. Also, there's a Minecraft Now coming in May, as kind of, I assume it's an online presentation of the next big update, which is constantly always a next big update. It's not video game related, but apparently Rick and Morty is getting an anime spin-off, which they had already done 2 or 3 anime spin-off episodes by different animators of Rick and Morty, so I don't know if there's really much of a difference there. Because, yeah, I mean, what can you really say? Is it does seem like that's just kind of the thing that happens, and is that they hire other animators to make things something labeled Rick and Morty to buy themselves more time. This is ridiculous. 58% frame drops. And the bitrate is at like 5,000 kilobits per second. I should watch the bitrate and see if maybe what I have is I just have it set up too high as far as the bitrate, and I should just lower the bitrates. Maybe something changed in OBS and when the settings changed somewhere. Let's see, BioWare is also hiring for several positions. I wanted to mention that too. Yep. Suffice it to say, because I started so late today, this is not going to be a particularly long stream. At any point I could start getting sleepy and just need to tap out. I am going to just try and move as fast as possible through all the news this Wednesday, and it's not, I don't think there really is that much news to even talk about. Alright. I keep grabbing this card. And that didn't do anything for me. Let's see. Video Games Chronicle says the GTA Trilogy Definitive Edition mobile release has seemingly been delayed. I think we've already talked about that. Take-Two's bosses remains coy on the potential FIFA deal with following the EA split. Which, okay. Jurassic World Evolution 2 is coming to Xbox Game Pass today. If you want to know that. I may be able to burn through these actually fairly quickly today, but I don't want to get my hopes too high. Xbox Game Pass titles for console, PC, and cloud include Skate and Sniper Elite 5. Giant Bomb went through a lot of the PlayStation Now list of games, that the new games that are being listed, and yeah, they weren't particularly enthusiastic about all the old games that were on that list and how there wasn't really anything interesting there. Apparently, the Dying Light studio Techland is making an open world fantasy action RPG, which it makes a lot of sense. Frankly, you could take a lot of the movement tech of Dying Light, put it in something like Skyrim, and improve Skyrim quite a bit. Which, I mean, you could basically do anything in Skyrim and improve Skyrim, but the clunky movement technology of Skyrim created a different kind of a kind of slow experience. That being said, at a certain point, if you're playing Dying Light, but all the zombies are just skinned to look like fantasy monsters, that probably wouldn't be much of a change either. So there might be a consideration there as to just, is it really worth the extra effort to go in that direction and try and have something. I don't even know what I'm trying to say. Yeah. If all of a sudden the things you could do in Skyrim go away, that the sword swinging, the spell casting, the talking with people and doing, if all of that went away in favor of just parkouring around from place to place, running to an NPC, talking to them for half a second to get your next mission, then running to that next location, that would be potentially away from what the audience of a Skyrim game probably wants. I imagine Skyrim players and Elder Scrolls players have a tendency to be more of a slower style of gameplay player, and they don't want an overemphasis on fast-paced actions. When you really think about where the Elder Scrolls games came from, where it would have been turn-based combat, where it would have been Dungeons and Dragons talking your way through things before it was even PC, moving to too fast of a movement technology can be a problem. But it would probably be nicer for the vast majority of people. And so you might very well abandon, Techland might do a good job of abandoning Elder Scrolls fans that they don't really have to satisfy anyways, in favor of something that's in the fantasy realm but is a much faster thing. In a lot of ways, the Lord of the Rings movies, I imagine, were a lot like that, where there was just a lot of action sequences shown, and a lot of the talking and discussion from the books was probably sidestepped in favor of more action scenes. I vaguely recall people claiming that to be the case. Apparently, the new PS5 console covers go on sale in June. These are the official ones, not to be confused with several other companies' unofficial ones. There was a whole controversy I vaguely recall around, I believe, D-Brand or D-Skins being sued by Sony. And of course, that's either going to never end up being anything at all, or it'll be a long-running court case. Yeah, I really do feel like a stuttering fool right now. About uhs and ums. Okay. I don't know why he helped me there. That seems crazy. More than likely, that guy didn't know what he was doing any more than I did. Let's see. I think we don't need to use that ability, we can just kill that. Moving on with the news. Take-Two explains why Grand Theft Auto doesn't include more real-world brands. To bring real-life brands in, they would have to be iconic and have to fit in within that world. In a lot of ways, this seems like an answer to a question nobody should have bothered to answer. Also, Grand Theft Auto kind of needs to be a parody world, and making it more realistic does not help that with brand tie-ins. Because if you start making Grand Theft Auto too hyper-realistic, and then there's brands associated with it, and then it's a hot coffee scandal happens, or people are beating up hookers, killing hookers, doing drugs, doing very illegal, very immoral things, the brand association there is not good. So almost certainly nobody has really approached GTA, or very few companies have actually approached GTA to do brand tie-ins. If anything, it feels like they put out this answer in the hope to get brand tie-ins more than anything else. Amid the Silent Hill 2 remake reports, Bloober says it will reveal new games as soon as they can. I still kind of lean towards the idea that Bloober team is not working on a new Silent Hill. They very well may be working on a remake of the original Silent Hills instead. Apparently Mega Man's Kieji Inafune is back with a Beastroid and a range of NFTs. The mighty number 9 creators designed his first futuristic NFT collection, Integrated. I don't know what the integrated part of that is, but late to the party certainly as far as making NFTs, and the gold rush on NFTs is something that has been passed, and people have realized that NFTs are not going to be valuable. And most sane people and realistic people realize that from the beginning. So that is really a good statement on just people's having some common sense. Not all common sense is lost, just most, it feels like. See, an Arma 4 precursor, Arma Reforger, released in early access for PC and Xbox. Bungie's CEO says the studio won't be muzzled by Sony following acquisition. PlayStation has reportedly told its studios they can't comment publicly on the reproductive rights Roe versus Wade. Bungie's CEO can say kind of whatever he wants, right up until the point where he's fired by Sony. Like, if the shareholders approve the acquisition, then once you're acquired, you're under full authority. Perhaps maybe if you're a board member, you have to have other shareholders vote somebody off the board, but anyone below a board member could still be fired, and you could potentially even be a board member and be fired from even a CEO position, as far as I understand it. Maybe I'm wrong about that. So, yeah, that you can make these claims all you want, but the truth is, it's not true. The problem here is, why is it so important for a company to come out and make a public statement as far as Roe versus Wade? Like, why are corporations and upper management so obsessed about corporations having their say and putting it out publicly and influencing or feeling like they're influencing people, when they don't care one bit about individuals doing the same? Like, nothing, as far as I've heard, has stopped any CEO, any Bungie employee from going out and picketing or protesting or publicly stating their support for or against Roe versus Wade. Like, each individual can say whatever they want. The only thing that Sony CEO has said, basically, is we're not going to put out official press conferences and official press releases on the matter, which is a very fence-sitting, neutral, middle-of-the-road stance to have, and it's exactly the stance any corporation should have, even if the CEO personally believes or not, one way or the other. Yeah, it seems this is really a symptom, and I hate to just immediately go there, but it obviously is just yet another symptom of video games, Western video game companies being so overrun and seemingly being even run by the CEOs by flaming SJWs that want to integrate politics into video games for no good reason, and that we have constantly seen this happen, where it's like, yeah, you could just leave things alone and make your own personal free speech statements personally on your Facebooks or whatever, or go out and actually protest, or go out and actually donate money to charities and organizations. Like, if you're in support of Roe versus Wade, yes, protesting to keep the law as it was makes a little bit of sense, but what you probably would do better to fund organizations like Planned Parenthood, first and foremost. That would help more people in the immediate term. It would help more people that need exact help now. The idea that any statement or any action that a video game company makes is going to change hearts and minds on this subject in particular is laughable. And I don't even think there's been a point here where anyone has said anything about Bungie's CEO from donating to something like Planned Parenthood. He could donate all he wants. I wouldn't even be surprised if Bungie could justify donating from Bungie's own corporate funds to Planned Parenthood to lower taxes and use it as a tax write-off. And that would do a lot more good than just putting out a statement. Like, talk is cheap. And corporations in particular, seem to have forgotten that talk is cheap. And talk from a non-entity, such as a corporation, something that is not a person, that is not a human, regardless of what people try to propagate is almost 100% worthless. And that'll probably be my rant for the day, which means I'll probably have to skip this rant. Saudi Arabia has bought a 5% stake in Nintendo in its latest gaming acquisition by the Kingdom's Sovereign Wealth Fund. This is basically the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia's fund, buying a 5.01% stake of Nintendo of Japan, I assume, the major company. It has been kind of consistently a case that Saudi Arabia has tried to buy small percentages just as a way of influence peddling. Like, we haven't seen Saudi Arabia actually try to have full ownership of a company. We haven't seen any actual desire, in my opinion, around actually owning a video game company or actually making a video game company. It's a waste of probably the Saudi Arabian people's funds, and not deeply understanding the politics in Saudi Arabia. I suspect we may fairly quickly find that as is most of the cases for most kingdoms, a lot of the wealth and resources that should have been given to the people have been funneled directly to the kings and princes. And when things start going financially bad, the citizens will be the ones suffering, and not the royalty. Same, I would say, is almost certainly true for the British royalty. It's a little crazy that Japan is letting this happen. Or it's a little crazy that Nintendo is letting it happen. In a lot of ways, I bet Nintendo really doesn't have a choice as long as the country of Japan is allowing foreigners to own stock in their companies. It's kind of crazy to let any foreign entity, country or corporation or whatever, own stock in a different country's business. Like, that's where you start to get into all the problems of world trade and global economics. Is so yeah, there's a lot of weirdness in that, all of that. Moving on, Call of Duty 2, Call of Duty Warzone 2 details have allegedly leaked, more like Blackout than the original, which I don't really know anything about Call of Duty, so that really doesn't mean anything to me, so I'll just move on. A Deathloop voice actor has teased a new project but claims it's not DLC, which, okay, if you're getting voice actors in there, then it would have to be a project that is fairly close to being done, and it seems a little early for Arcane Studio to potentially have another project already done, but not super early, particularly if you look upon Deathloop and see it as kind of a small game that it feels like they cut some corners on, really, as far as just like how things how things finally came out with Deathloop. There was a ton of hype around Deathloop, and then I never really heard of anybody who was actually a video gamer playing it or reviewing it. I didn't see YouTubers really playing it or reviewing it. I just saw a lot of Giant Bomb talking about it and other mainstream video game journalists talking about it, and then, as they typically do, they abandoned it about 5 days after the release. Let's see. Final Fantasy VII news will be shared next month. Remake director reveals, which I suppose that is an announcement for announcement. One of these Final Fantasy VII remake games has fairly consistently been getting mods for mostly Tifa, mostly putting her either nude or in scantily clad clothing. So the state of mods, as it were, seems to be about the same as it ever was, and that there's very little interest in changing any aspect of the game other than the appearance of characters, almost always the appearance of the female characters, almost always in some kind of sexualized nature. Which, if that is just going to consistently be the state of mods, then perhaps it would be better if that's just fully embraced, and there should just be nude mods for every game and some kind of integrated API that adjusts for all of that. Let's see if this works. What? All that and it still didn't work. So apparently Ritual Buster, not as useful as it seems. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says a Test Drive Unlimited Solar Crown delayed to 2023, and last gen versions of the game cancelled. Sony CEO says Bungie acquisition marks a major step forward in becoming more multi-platform. I don't really trust Sony's CEO to make good games in general, full stop, so them being multi-platform doesn't really mean that much. It seems like if in the next 4 to 6 years Sony releases maybe 5 AAA games, and let's say all 5 of them are multi-platform, I guess yay, you get 5 more potentially PC multi-platform AAA games. But that's about it. That's like the best case scenario, in my opinion. Worst case scenarios, they make this acquisition, 1 game is multi-platform, and that is it. Well, it seems like the network cleared up on itself. I think the problem here is I may have just set up this to go to the YouTube primary ingest server instead of the backup ingest server. I think I should probably go back to the backup ingest server next stream. I'll change the settings after the stream if I remember. I feel like I'm getting these same cards over and over again now at this point. We're about approaching the halfway point as far as this fusion Duel. But yeah, I could see that streaming at specific points might just be YouTube having problems instead of my computer having problems. If my computer is having network trouble, it's basically only having network trouble. Although the only thing I'm really doing with my computer right now is programming and make code, which is not really that intensive. I need to get back to playing Ni no Kuni, but man, I'm just extending this vacation and trying to finish this project. Let's see, the Elder Scrolls 5 Skyrim Anniversary Edition. Boy, I'm stumbling all over that. Has reportedly been rated for the Switch, which, Yay, yet another Skyrim release. Although, in this case, this would be a Skyrim release after Bethesda has been acquired by Microsoft, which I don't think changes much. Last of Us PS5 remake is reportedly likely to be released in 2022. It feels very ridiculous that they're going in circles here, remaking a game that's not really that old. It does definitely give the feeling that there is not a lot on PlayStation's plate if their big news story is that they're remaking a game that's probably less than 10 years old. Ubisoft Montreal's Roller Champions is being released next week. DICE says Battlefield 2042 Season 1 is currently set for release in early June. Call of Duty Vanguard's multiplayer is currently free for 1 week if you want to check that out. And that's all the GameDeveloper.com news, so we're already at the Gamatsu news. Let's see. Fall Guys goes free to play on June 21st alongside a launch for the PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series, Switch, and Epic Games Store versions, seemingly intentionally leaving out Steam. I guess that's because it's already on Steam and has been since August 4th, 2020. And I guess it's not really sufficient news to restate old information in the headline. Token Rambu Warriors for PC is coming to the West in May 24th. This is one of those warrior games I would almost have to assume, so like it's not really one I would have expected to have come to PC. No, this doesn't really look like a Warriors game. It could be one, but if it is, they're going in a slightly different animation style and a different look. I wish this was a gameplay trailer more. Let's see, let's check out the Steam page. Yeah, it looks more like a hack and slash fighting game zoomed in instead of a yeah, definitely feels like a different type of game. It says this is actually a crossover from Token Rambu Online, which is a game I don't recognize, and the thrilling 1 vs 1000 Warriors series of Koei Tecmo. Yeah, I'm not really seeing the Warriors series here, but that would explain why it looks so different as a game compared to what I would expect when seeing something with Warriors in the name. Kind of ridiculous that you can have a series that's a Warrior series and that such a generic word would be descriptive of an entire genre of games. Let's see, the strategy RPG Fairy Fencer F Refrain Chord has been announced for PS4 and PS5 and Switch. Apparently the story is updated. It's due out September 15th in Japan. What's the update in particular? The actual gameplay, again, looking, as often is the case, looking very different from what the teaser images look like. I don't even see where the update is in this article. Update screenshots. That's the update. Here's some screenshots. Let's see, the Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 character, this Diceboo has been announced, which I guess this is another one of those ancient god characters that they introduced in the latest versions of Dragon Ball. In a lot of ways, if you described Dragon Ball Z as as the way I would describe it. I don't think very many people would have ever been interested in watching it. The concept of a series that's going to follow one character just constantly getting stronger and stronger and beating and winning and succeeding and just always doing great. If anything, One Punch Man is kind of a great parody of Goku as a character, and Goku as a character is kind of a terrible character because he's just a perfect character for the most part, always succeeding, always getting stronger, never actually failing it sometimes only to come back stronger. It's not really what the original Dragon Ball series was either. Like, and even early parts of Dragon Ball Z tried really hard. If you look episode to episode, a lot of those filler arcs, or what people would call filler arcs or filler episodes, were trying to introduce other characters and focus on other characters, but at some point it just completely went off the rails, and the audience that are fans of Dragon Ball Z, and all other Dragon Ball content, they just mentally filter out all the other characters and all the filler, or what they call filler, all the character storyline and building, in favor of an abridged fight sequence that's been going on for years, that's happening in their mind. And honestly, I would say that the Dragon Ball cartoons are not even animated that particularly well as far as the fight sequences. Like, at a certain point, all art happens in your mind a lot more than it actually happens in front of your eyes or to your ears. Because that is because nostalgia takes over, and what you actually are experiencing is more of a combination of mental experiences than what you actually saw. Moving on, back to video games. Final Fantasy 15 shipments and digital sales have topped 10 million. I've kind of completely forgotten about what Final Fantasy 15 even was about until I saw the screenshot that you are this kid going to marry this girl, and you were on this bachelor party road trip, and then it led to a bigger adventure. I think the vast majority of the story in Final Fantasy 15 happened in a separate anime movie release anyways, so I don't know if you were to play Final Fantasy 15 knowing absolutely nothing starting today, whether you actually would experience anything at all, or whether it would just be or experience anything different, or if it would just be a very generic game, just more Final Fantasy for Final Fantasy fans. So, summon this. Getting rid of this. We'll destroy a card on the field in favor of that. We will go ahead and just activate that. Protect that. We'll destroy this card on the field, and then this guy's ability should let me destroy this card on the field, destroying his options, at least to some amount. Still not really winning that much. It certainly goes to show, when you're having network trouble, it takes forever for it to get the percentages down. I was hitting nearly 60% frame drops, and now it is slowly lowering it down to about 42% frame drops, and 0% is really what you want. Can't do anything, so we'll just attack and see if he's really gotten anything he can activate. See, Xbox Game Pass added Jurassic World Evolution 2, Her Story, Sniper Elite, and more. There's actually quite a lot of pictures here of games. It's kind of weird, the headlines only talking about a few. A squad-based real-time strategy game, the Valiant, has been announced for PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, and PC. Let's see, 505 Games and the Bearded Ladies announced a tactical adventure game called Miasma Chronicles for PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. Might be something to this. 505 Games, and maker of was the publisher, and then it's Mutant Year Zero Road to Eden developer, Bearded Ladies. This looks like this could be interesting. Also looks like it might be more of a top-down Diablo actual experience. So there might be a lot of repetition, a lot of wandering around destroyed environments. Yeah, I really wouldn't hate the idea of playing Diablo 1 if it was remade and released today. Which I guess a certain argument means I should just play Diablo 3. If anything, I think the Diablo series is probably a great example of why you shouldn't reboot things, and you should just number things and move forward with a narrative. The narrative around the Diablo stories has never been much anyway, so Diablo comes back, you have to defeat Diablo or something similar to that every numbered game in the series, so release Diablo 4 and give us a slightly better version of that same gameplay mechanic, new environments. If anything, there should potentially be an abridged catch-up of the 3 previous Diablo games in kind of like a boss rush sequence, or like that's pretty much all you need to know is like the general gist of Act 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of each of the Diablo games. Moving on, a first-person survival action adventure game called Among the Trolls has been announced for PC, which right now seems to be just screenshots of very little. The idea of being among trolls sounds like it might be slightly interesting, but I could see it not being much different from any other survival game. This again is being published by 505 Games, so they obviously had a press conference. The myth of trolls is, as we imagine them nowadays, being big and gigantic and lumbering and ogreish. Which, that's an interesting question. Is an ogre a troll, or are they different? That kind of myth, though, has a hard time still existing as something people could actually believe in, because something that big is just like impossible to believe exists and not have been seen. Oh, that didn't work for me, so I've lost. Let's see. Moving on, Phobia Saint Dina Hotel launches June 28th, which, okay. I don't know what kind of game it even is. What's it tagged as? A horror PC game? You know, we were always flooded with a ton of horror PC games. In a lot of ways, this looks like what if you were in room 1408 or the Stanley Hotel and had a gun, which is some weirdness around that. In a lot of ways, this feels like an attempt at doing a new twist on Resident Evil with more puzzle solving. A certain level, like a hotel becoming like the building in Control, makes a spookier environment than an office building. There wasn't really a lot spooky around the Control building. Not that I think it was ever really trying to be super spooky. And being in some kind of magical hotel that's where they're locking in monsters, or where monsters have taken over, is a thought. It's not much of a thought. There was a show that was made and then canceled. It was actually a Marvel character crossover before Marvel kind of took tighter controls as far as their spin-off things. I think it was called Hellsing or Hellstorm or something, based off some very unrecognizable Marvel characters. And one of the things that happened in that show, though, is that demons would possess people, and there was a group that was trying to fight the demons, and all they could really do is keep people who were possessed in comas for the rest of their lives, so the demons can't jump out and possess someone else. Which, that's certainly a concept you could play with as to a reason why you would have a hotel and why it would be full of monsters. Something like that. I'm down to 37.1% dropped frames now. But if I've been going about an hour, going another hour without a single dropped frame will only get me down to about 18.5% drop frames. So that you can kind of see how those numbers would, if I'm doing the math right. Maybe I'm not doing the math right. Let's try a different loner deck. I'm just really goofing around here, trying to get quick victories, not really expecting to win too much. I'd love to win, I just don't believe I will. Here, Komatsu has the same article, Techland developing a AAA open-world fantasy action RPG with the former CD Projekt Red staff, which, honestly, I don't think you'd even want to mention former CD Projekt Red staff being involved in it. When you look at this concept art, what does a concept art like this really mean? Well, it means they want to focus on water tech. It means they want to focus on architectural technology. The columns and pillars here and the walls and the towers here definitely indicate that there will be climbing, jumping, things like that. So there'll be swimming, jumping, climbing. There'll be some focus on foliage too. There'll be some focus on storytelling because we see a statue here. You can see a city off in the distance, so they do also want more condensed areas. And very often in concept work, you will just see drawings of scenery and not including a person. So the inclusion of a person does also indicate that they're thinking of some different stuff. They're also probably thinking of some weather and some lighting, ray tracing stuff, even though nothing here really screams ray tracing. But if you were going to take anything from it, you would definitely assume every single aspect is some keyword that was said in some meeting, and it's the beginnings of the ideas. It's nowhere close to what the actual final product will be, but it does scream some level of where they're leaning towards. You do this one and this one. Banish one hero from a graveyard, add one polymerization from your deck. Sure. What influenced that so it didn't happen? Do I not have any polymerizations? Maybe I don't. You can also see from this concept art, if you're just trying to squeeze every drop from it, they are thinking big. What they're not showing here is any kind of monsters and creatures, but you'd imagine they would be bigger creatures. You're not going to expect this just to be a world full of human-sized zombie or fantasy equivalents of zombies. In a lot of ways, I could see leaning towards having very few enemies at all in the game, and it being more smaller sequenced areas where you run into enemies instead of them just being randomly everywhere. Although if you're going for more of that Skyrim feeling, you're going to have a lot of different types of animals that you can hunt and enemies to fight for variety, and that probably is the better way to go. Hellpoint for the PS5 and Xbox Series launches July 12th alongside an expansion Blue Sun, which I am shocked that they are still even trying to do anything with Hellpoint. As a concept, though, Hellpoint always sounded slightly interesting, but I don't think really succeeded. Unless I'm thinking of a different game. I think I am. I think I was thinking of Hellgate, come to think of it. I have no idea what Hellpoint is, come to think. Yeah, and that's in part why I do these streams, is to get my head straight as far as to how many of the thousands upon thousands of games exist there. Yeah, I was thinking of Hellgate London, which I don't think they really have done anything with Hellgate London in a long time. I think it's trying to chug along, but I kind of wish Hellgate London had succeeded better. It was too ambitious and too all over the place, I think. Let's see, Shattered Remastered Deluxe has been announced for basically everything. Shattered being an Arkanoid clone with some 3D twists to it and different twists. Kind of more of a less of an Arkanoid and more of a side-scroll shooting, side-scrolling shooter game, I would say. Either way, it's not really my type of game. Let's see, Armor Reforger announced for Xbox Series and PC alongside Armor 4. It's been kind of a while since we've seen something announced just for Xbox and PC. The fear, definitely with all the Microsoft acquisitions, is we're going to start seeing a lot of that. That hasn't really panned out as a concern so much yet. It might be a concern later. Let's see. Azure Striker Gunvolt 3 English voiceovers and limited print physical edition have been announced. Which, yep. Azure Striker Gunvolt is that odd looking hack and slash game. It almost feels like what it's trying to be is a Mega Man if you slightly changed the emphasis on Mega Man, less shooting with a blaster cannon and more faster movement and platforming. Which there might be room, certainly, for something like that, to take the general concept of a Mega Man game where you're going through a collection of levels and beating a boss at the end, and maybe getting even the abilities of the boss at the end, and just speeding that up and modernizing that thought a little bit. Right. Let's see what this does. We will banish that card. Let's see if this negates that. Let's see. Cygames has trademarked Akiba Maid War in Japan, which I assume this would be a continuation of the Akiba strip series. Although MW may indicate that it's a mobile game, or it might indicate that it's in that same vein, but not quite the same idea. Maybe it won't have energy vampires and be a similar style of playing games with less of the energy vampire, fashion vampire aspect to it. I'm trying to remember what the first Akiba game was that didn't come out to the West until after Akiba Strip came out. I think it's called, the HD version of it is Hellbound and Debriefed or something like that. Alright, we'll see if I can summon something to save me, but best case scenario, I summon this and then attack with this. They do point out, while the English text Akiba Maid World, the Japanese text reads Akiba Meido Shinsou. It is a play on words, as the word Meido means netherworld, but is pronounced the same as maid. So, yeah. And that is certainly some of the weirdness of the Japanese language, certainly, and they love to do those puns, which don't translate at all. There's a lot of words that are like there, and there, or two, and two, equivalents to that, but I don't think I've ever heard an English joke or pun that has made big use of things that are spelled differently but sound the same. Whereas the Japanese, I think, do that a lot more because I think their language is a little bit more simplistic and has more overlap. Or maybe there's just a historical reason for it. Digital Extreme has trademarked the Soul Frame in Europe. DNF Duel Story Mode trailer is available if you want to check that out. The Caligula Effect 2 is coming to PC on July 24th, which, if I had more time and my computer was working, would maybe give me an argument to play the Caligula Effect 1. See, in a weird position, certainly. If I burned through Ni no Kuni and still wanted to play Japanese RPGs, I could see potentially moving away from something that pretended a lot, and I really feel like Ni no Kuni, as far as I played up to that point, felt like it was pretending to be a kid-friendly game when really it was too complicated of a game. So I could see swinging the other direction and just saying, hey, let's play something called the Caligula Effect, which is almost certainly more of a teenage angst-filled, more mature JRPG. But more realistically, I'd just not play a Japanese RPG, and I'd move on to playing like Fallout New Vegas or some Western RPG. Moving on, Capcom sales updates. Monster Hunter Rise at 9 million. Monster Hunter World Iceborne 9.2 million. Capcom puts out these numbers fairly consistently, and the way they do it is very informative because it kind of puts a rank as far as just like some of their older games. Resident Evil Village selling 6.1 million. Resident Evil 2 9.6 million. Resident Evil 3 5.2 million. So you can kind of see how not a ton of interest in Resident Evil 3 compared to Resident Evil 2, and definitely a lot of interest in Resident Evil 2 Remake. The original Resident Evil Remake not even really making this chart. Devil May Cry at 5 million. So being more of a niche game, that kind of makes sense. Monster Hunter World, tripling that though at 18 million. Resident Evil 7 at 10 million. Also, so Village, as it were, being, I guess, Resident Evil 8, still taking some time to catch up. Of course, a lot of these games are also released at different times, so it's not super surprising that some of them are still trying to catch up. Yeah, the original Resident Evil for like PS3 and DL, the original remake of Resident Evil, not really showing up here on the list. Some of these numbers also are from Wii games, and so this list is kind of low. Kind of slow. It also definitely felt like we were getting to a point where maybe they're just bundling the original Resident Evil with remakes. We were getting to a point, certainly, where it felt like they were going to any day now announce a real Resident Evil 4 remake and just say, hey, we're very close to it being released, or it's coming out in a year or 2 years. But all we had was that Resident Evil 4 remake HD project, fan project, which I should definitely play that game fairly quickly. And that's pretty much it as far as anything Resident Evil 4, and that they're talking about the VR version of Resident Evil 4, and they definitely indicated no winner in 4 turns. Yeah, I don't understand these rules that say no winner in 4 turns and why I lost there. Like, that doesn't fully make sense unless somebody played some card. And if they did play a card, they need to show the card even if they don't have an animation. It needs to come out of the graveyard or wherever it is and just appear in front of you. And I guess I could go back and check the logs and see what happened there, but I don't really care enough to check. One would hope that this isn't just random arbitrary rules that you have to win in 4 turns, and I just don't know that. Moving on, here we have the Famitsu review scores for issue 1746. Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach getting 30 out of 40. Radiant Tale, a game I haven't even heard of, 32 out of 40. And then Your Kill the Culmination Games, 32 out of 40. So everything about average, nothing super surprising there. Death vs. Let It Die open beta test begins May 28th, and this has been updated, so we are still getting a lot of very consecutive announcements about this Death vs. Let It Die game, which doesn't look terrible as a concept. It might be a little wild and crazy. It definitely feels like this game is going to be more bright and not just inside of what looked like sewers or underground buildings. Looks like you're going to actually be able to see the sky, and that always tends to lead for a more cheery experience, even if that's not the theme they're going for. Let's see, a game called Mercenary Rebirth Call of the Wild Links coming to PC in 2022. This, I assume, is a RPG of some sort. It says it's a turn-based RPG. Yeah. It does not look like anything of real interest. Yep. I really have to wonder how many Japanese fans still enjoy playing games like this, particularly random versions of games like this. A confusion summon. So you probably want to summon this to activate this ability. We'll see what happens here. Might as well just activate this. Spend 1,000 to banish that card. Now the hope here is that this we need to find something that would work fairly well in the graveyard. It doesn't have to be a small thing, it could definitely be an 8-star. This one can't be special summoned. You need to find something that is very useful. Yeah, let's do that. Don't want that one. I'm trying too hard to win here. That one and that one. Let's see. Yes, you want to do this? And then maybe you're supposed to do something like that. That just put something on top of the deck. Wow, 240 seconds have already gone by. What have I been doing? It's really slow. Let's see. Moving on, Saga series official broadcast set for May 31st. I do want to point out that by limiting the number of extensions, I have significantly reduced the amount of RAM I'm using in Chrome. Like, browsing is still kind of slow, so there is like one plugin I would want to enable, and I probably could just enable it right now to make browsing a little bit faster. But otherwise, I went from having only 2 sticks of very old, slow RAM in my computer at the moment. I went from using 100% of those 2 sticks to 50% of those 2 sticks. I also caught up, so I didn't have hundreds upon hundreds of tabs open, which is also a factor, certainly. But I am frankly shocked that that worked as well as it did. Let's see. Banished. I guess you banished that one. See what happens here. And that didn't let me do anything. Moving on, Final Fantasy VII 25th anniversary news set for June. Which, okay, that's an announcement for an announcement. Amanita Design announces an adventure game called Phonopolis, which looks like something, but I really couldn't even tell you. I'd have to watch the video, so I might as well just watch the video. Looks like a different art style, and that's about all I could say about it. I have no idea how this game would actually play. They're calling it an adventure game. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a point-and-click adventure type experience. We're down to almost 25% frame drops now, so it did clear up. Which does definitely indicate that there isn't something wrong specifically with my network connection. Plus, I'm not really running into problems loading web pages or anything else. It's just streaming. That definitely leans towards OBS or YouTube themselves. If anything, it leads more to YouTube themselves. Can't activate this again. Alright, let's summon this. And that does nothing for us. And we lose. Let's start going through the games that came out on Steam. It seems like we'll probably be able to burn through all these. Here we have a horror game called Witching Hour that has some people being shown and a little bit more variety. This might be a single A, double A attempt. I'm actually logged in at the moment too, so I can just put that on the follow list. I don't... The thing with horror games is, like, yes, I would like one indie, highly polished horror game to come out every now and then, but the fear is you get even one of those to come out and then it encourages all the low effort asset flip horror creators to make hundreds upon other horror games. And you get a lot of things like Horror Story here that are constantly flooding Steam. $1.79 English only. Here we have a game called Space Maker. Peek through different dimensions, it says. I'm not sure how this really plays. Yeah, it kind of feels like there's different alternate dimensions of a world. Might be something interesting to that. It's also free, so this is potentially some student project or something. English and Chinese. It often doesn't make sense why these free games come out, even if they are student project. We have something called Rail Walkers, which looks like you're programming little robots to follow the rails. That was not the one to play. They had those little toys that you could draw a line and they would follow the line, and those were interesting for about 6 months at most, and then I bet they didn't sell, and I bet kids lost interest fairly quickly. That is the life cycle of kids' toys, obviously, is that kids are extremely fickle and get uninterested fairly quickly. Here we have a game called Faking to Dance, which does not look like much of anything. Also, it requires VR, and yet it looks kind of black and white, which I would assume there's some weirdness there. And let's bring out either this one or this one. I guess we do want to draw 2 cards. You have to be extremely careful when you're trying to make something that is black and white. I've said this dozens of times, though. There just has to be a lot of resolution and a lot of detail to that. So, and this game doesn't feel like it has that. Here you have something called Music is the Language, which doesn't look like much of anything. Let's see. Which one do we want to cancel or discard? Probably that one is the one not to get rid of, but I'm going to anyways. Here we have a game called Riding Away, which just looks like it's probably more of a visual presentation of a VR video than anything else. So no to that. Here we have a local paper, Small Town, which looks like it is another VR game. I'm just gonna put this on the follow list. What's funny is we really haven't seen a lot of VR games that try to do anything different. It seems fairly ridiculous that you would be doing crossword puzzles or mazes in VR. Why you would do that, why you would use such a horrible interface. Okay, so if I summon this one, I can then special summon this one. And then apparently... Do I have an edge imp in the graveyard? Yes, I do. So if I send this one back, I can summon this. I cannot summon this again, though. Not that I think it matters. That was a loss of potentially 600 damage. What's edge and chains? I guess? Think I've won there. Let's see, here we have a game called Wonder Pot. Does it have microtransactions as a gambling simulator? And does it look like a gambling simulator really worth putting your effort into? Free to play with in-app purchases, does say microtransactions. Still struggling to find a good casino game that doesn't actually get dangerously close to actual gambling or cross the line into actual gambling. We have something called Myrenscapes, for lack of a better term. It's yet another free game. A lot of free games today so far. T90 Tank Battle Simulator VR. Yeah, doesn't look like much of anything. Let's see, Dual Jousting VR is not visually polished enough for a VR game. Far too pixely for a VR game. With your eyes right in front of the screen, I don't think the pixel aesthetic is ever going to be the right choice. Alright. Go ahead and attack here. And then attack here. And then go for the big attack here. And all we're doing is running up the amount of direct damage. And maybe one of 2 or 3 times I've actually been able to have 5 characters on the field too. Still victory, no damage, over 3,000 damage, performs fusion summon, special summon. In the end, it just ends up giving you a couple of normal cards. Still, not a lot of reward. Think we are, next time I get another 1,000, we are at the point now where we'll start to get the special fusion reward tickets, which are prove themselves to be different from the other legendary pack reward tickets, but perhaps a little bit better than standard legendary pack tickets. Here we have a game on Steam called Tic Tac Puppet, which looks like an experiment in physics that they're trying to sell as a game. Early access, free. Trying to sell it as a game when they're not even charging money, oddly. Here we have one of those Japanese-only RPG games. If anything, it's probably Chinese, and the text seems to be kind of minimal. Yeah, compared to most Chinese RPG games, there's less text there than you'd normally expect to see. Let's see, we have a game called Symmetry Lines, which doesn't look like much of anything. We have Box Rush 2 Ice Worlds. $6.59, an English and Russian game. Languages. Not really looking at languages anymore, which honestly breaking myself of the habit of looking at languages will probably be very helpful. Target a spell. Start with this one. Just gonna cancel this one, I think. Do your opponent's main phase. We want that in the hand. Let's put this on the field. Guys, just canceling as much as possible. Is nothing gonna work? Let's see, we have a game called Block Breaker 2, which doesn't look like much of a game. We've seen this several times again before. $6.59, English and Russian. Slaughter Cannon 2, which doesn't look like anything. English and Russian. But clearly there is at least one, I would assume, Russian troll money laundering organization that's somewhat back to their old schemes. Right. Discard one card. Put that in the graveyard. Cancel that. Special summon this one. There. Yeah, I'm really not sure this is gonna work. If anything, I'm just playing these cards to get rid of his cards and his countermeasures. Send that one to the graveyard anyway, since it's being targeted. Summon that one. See if we can activate this effect now. And let's see what polymerization does. $22, 3,000. $2,000. How many are in this? That'd be not enough. Gain attack. Half of that. That would be the dangerous one. Alright, so we do this one. And then you do this. And then this. And then you activate this effect, sending that to the graveyard. And then I couldn't attack anyways because the swords are revealing light, so we'll leave it at that. And then during the standby phase, I may not have the cards to activate this turn, but I could potentially activate this next turn if I can get the right cards on the field. And at this point, I probably do have enough of these fluffles. I have 3 of them in the graveyard. A couple more would be helpful. Let's see, we have a game on Steam here called Final Foe, which looks like just a top-down arena game of no interest. We have a game called Canine Uprising, which looks like garbage. We have Blocked Zona, which doesn't look visually polished enough. Again, not really checking languages, not really checking prices anymore. If visually it looks bad, I'm just gonna give up on it before even scrolling down to save time. Okay, so we do that. Oh, darn it. Activate this effect and bring this back. Activate this effect and do something else. Let's see. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Poker Loafer, which looks like it's a little corner screen poker blackjack game. It doesn't even really look like blackjack though. It looks pretty awful. For $3, English and Chinese, that's a pretty low effort game. We have a match 3 game called Amanda's Magic Book 4 True Love. Which, okay. $5.39. English only. Ace up and attack. I feel like I put that spell that would have destroyed this for 1,000 on top, then shuffled my deck maybe a couple times. Here we have a game called I Am Butter, which I assume is an attempt at being a parody on I Am Bread, but arguably I think I barely even want to play I Am Bread. It's a free game, but then it's VR only, which is an odd choice. Like, definitely feels like a weird decision to make that a VR game. Right. Let's activate this. Discard this. Let's see. Well, that worked, but I don't think either one of these can still attack. So the idea of a general rule that if there's just no victories in 4 turns is kind of crazy when you have Swords of Revealing Light, stopping a player from playing for 3 turns. And even at that, Swords of Revealing Light, while powerful, is not so powerful that you see it used consistently in top tier meta deck play. In fact, winning in more than 2 turns is pretty uncommon. Let's see. Moving on, Leap for PC launches in early access on June 1st. Legend of Heroes Trails from Zero has a character trailer, so I assume that this is a... Or, is that Trials? No, it's Trails. So I assume that this is a new Legend of Heroes game, and what is, I think, a series that it's fairly quickly undoing its welcome in that it's too much. Let's activate this one. Return to that to the deck. Yeah, Trails from Zero here actually looks like it's probably a mobile game. Either that or the animation is just pretty small, chibi polygonal. Definitely is not visually appealing. This one should let me send this to the graveyard. See what happens there. Seemingly nothing. Moving on, AI to Somnium Files Nirvana Initiative has a characters trailer showing off more weird looking anime characters. I definitely get the feeling that AI, the Somnium Files, is just a more mature group of people compared to like Danganronpa, and that's the general gist of what they're going for. Well, he managed in 3 turns to summon something stronger, so unless I can succeed, or he decides to attack this one instead of this one, I'm gonna probably be in some trouble. A game called Greedfall 2: The Dying World has been announced for consoles and PC, which I do vaguely recall a game called Greedfall. I don't think I could tell you anything about it though. Looks like it's kind of a fantasy world. And yeah, that's about as much as I could say about it. Yeah, and he's choosing to attack the one that's the right one to attack. Let's see. Test Drive Unlimited Solar Crown delayed to 2023. The PS4 and Xbox One versions canceled. I think we'll start to hear more news like this where games get canceled. We're about to the point also where the drop frame rates is below 20%. So it did fix itself. A rural life RPG called Spiritia is coming to consoles and PC in 2022. This is definitely a game that I think would not be very relatable to people in the West. They just really wouldn't understand that rural lifestyle. The visuals here definitely are not helping either. Even country, if you grew up in the country in the United States, for instance, it's going to be absolutely totally different than growing up in the country in Japan. Let's see. Is there anything we can do here? Just shift it to a defense position. World Rally Championship Generations has been announced for PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, and PC. Which, okay. Not visually super polished from the looks of it, but I would like to see something as kind of a competitor. Alright, activate that through the graveyard and see if that lets me do anything different. Are we in the standby phase yet? No. So, is there something that I can activate during the standby phase? Let's try this card. I don't think any of these are going to be that useful. But yeah, we still need 3 or 4 competitors as far as racing games. Always pushing the amount of tracks and the amount of entertainment forward. It's kind of hard to not want more tracks and more visual polish. Arguably, they're focusing far too much on visual polish, and more cars that drive differently and more tracks are really what racing games should focus on. I hate to say games as a service might be a good idea for racing games, but a game as a service might be a decent idea for a racing game compared to any other implementation. Let's see. Gamatsu has the Steel Rising story trailer, which we'd already kind of seen teaser trailers of Steel Rising. These robotic automatrons fighting other robotic automatrons in this kind of French Revolutionary look. Right. Let's do this. We want this. And if we take this, we're hoping that'll work. Yeah, let's just risk it. So, to do that, then we need to get rid of ones that can't do anything for us in the graveyard. Anymore. Wow. Let's see. So I was barely, without actually doing the math, 100 over. Select a card to send to the graveyard. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can send apparently up to 9. So let me think about. Is there anything specific we would... That gets me down to 17 cards. Hmm. So that was, I destroyed a level 9 monster, that's why it let me send level 9 characters into the graveyard. If I destroyed a level 1 monster, I would have only been able to send 1. Interesting. And he just lost his attack. But I think he may get it back next turn. And let's just go banish something we have 2 copies of to cancel that effect. That's an interesting card, Forbidden Dress. Interesting art style here for a card, because you don't just get a general, here's a human holding up a dress as an art thing. You almost always get something a little bit weirder. Here's a bear with wings, or here's a bunch of scissors added together to be some kind of spirit. Alright, do we want to even do Monster Reborn? I don't think we do. Again, just run up the amount of damage. Let's see, we got a Legacy Pack ticket, Legacy Pack ticket, and Legacy Pack ticket here. And one more victory would get us our first Fusion Reward ticket, which they desperately need different art there. They need a festival ticket icon. Moving on, Roller Champions for PS4, Xbox One, and PC launches May 25th. Escape Academy launches June 28th. Escape Academy, I believe, is a co-op game. Yep. Kind of an improvement on some already existing co-op Escape the Room games. Visually, it doesn't look that good. Let's see, Dragon Quest X Offline details the alchemy pot and rare themed monsters. Like, I really would prefer this more flat, old school animation style. Calling this old school is a little weird for RPGs, particularly if you're going to have these chibi characters. The camera can zoom in a little bit better. It's a little bit easier to read, I think, than low polygon 3D models. And then our final Gamatsu article here is Sniper Elite 5 Kill Cam Enhanced trailer and screenshots are available. Here you can see a kill cam showing a bullet about to hit somebody, which that's kind of the main selling factor in the Sniper Elite series. I'm not sure how much gameplay actually even exists outside of snipering people and getting kill cams. I wouldn't be surprised if the Sniper Elite series is almost 100% snipering people, but maybe there's some other things you have to do, like a part where you have to actually reach a crow's nest like position before you can sniper people, or you can wander around an open world small city to find the best tactical position before you settle in and sniper somebody. Here we have another Chinese mobile game port. We haven't really seen a lot of these lately, but we're still seeing a decent amount. Here we have something called Deep. It looks just like asset slips, so we can say no to that. Again, Chinese. So we're starting to get back to this. This one looks like this might be an Indian RPG Maker game. $8.99, English and Thai. Yeah, so I guess that's Taiwanese, not Indian. Here we have a game called Night Story, which I kind of like the paper art style here, but then every screenshot just really screams that there really isn't that much going on here. So it feels like you might spend about 5 minutes on it and that's it. So I'm gonna have to say no to that. Still can't play. Here we have a game called Recursive Ruin. There was this game based on recursion. I don't know if this is it. I kind of don't think it is, but I'll put it on the follow list. That there is this like recursive puzzle game I heard about. In fact, I saw Jesse Cox as a YouTuber was playing something a lot like a modern take on FTL, which FTL definitely could have used some polish, although it really wouldn't change too much if you've spent hundreds of hours playing FTL. Playing something that's very similar to FTL is going to come down to just a variety in the events and the missions. Here we have something called Speedrun, which looks like nothing. Yeah, we are gonna earn a little early. Good. We have a Monuments Flippers prologue, which the idea of flipping a monument is unrealistic compared to something like House Flippers, but I mean, how do you make a sequel to House Flippers? At a certain level, I guess there are people that will very carefully restore historical monuments, but the number of people that would have that job are probably very few and far between. I'd say it probably happens a lot in the UK and Britain, a lot more than in the United States that doesn't have anywhere as many old buildings, and the UK and Britain have crazy rules and regulations about keeping everything looking like it's hundreds of years old, despite a desperate need for modernization in their appearance, their attitude, and just realizing how much their society has changed and should change. Right. Take another polymerization. We will take one of these. We will go ahead and activate what we need. Now, let's see if he tries to cancel it. If he does, we'll throw out the other polymerization. It's already down to 40,000. Here we have a Japanese-only game called Predator and Wreck, which probably wouldn't be something that would make it to the wish list, but I might give it a follow. But I don't have to because it's Japanese only anyways. Price also pretty much highlights that it's not what needs to be there. Alright, so we did this one. Let's get rid of this one to start with. And this one. Let's see what happens here. See what he tries to do. Here we have a game on Steam called Chorus, which looks like it is a /race/block pushing puzzle game for $11.99, which is way too expensive. Otherwise, it kind of looked alright. We have an animal babysitter fighter zombie coming, which the name alone tells you that this is not somebody being serious. If anything, though, this may be an indication of how many games are getting rejected as far as low-effort asset flip games with scantily clad 3D models of characters, because we're not really seeing too much as far as that. Instead, you have somebody in a nun outfit. Oh, darn it! I was gonna win there. I wasn't paying attention enough. I didn't realize it was my turn. The way the turns go back and forth. I would have won that too. So yeah, nonsense in the naming, nonsense in the 3D models being added. Visually, it's getting a little bit trickier every time. English and Chinese. Maybe that's why it's not loot, is because it's Chinese. We have Ice Maze Cave Skate Escape, which looks like nothing. We have a game called Dungeon Dueler, which, yeah, looks like nothing. Here we have something called The Pest, which looks like nothing. Here we have a game called Gibbon Beyond the Trees, which I assume you're playing as kind of a gibbon monkey. Alright, let's actually play this time and not end up screwing up. Chain Sabers. Okay, I guess I can see the chains there. So yeah, I'll put this Gibbon game on the follow list, not knowing anything else about it. We have a game called Mike and Tyler, which looks like a point and click adventure game. Looks like it might even be an adult narrative game. Of course, it's coming soon, which generally I don't want to cover games that are coming soon. Yeah, and I guess I just at this point I've completely given up on the idea of going back and looking at the games that I missed for 2 weeks. It's not a big loss. This Polygon game is like a Super Monkey Ball clone. There might be something to it though. Like the monkey in the ball is not the part that would make a Super Monkey Ball game good. It would be the physics and the rolling, and even at that I don't know if you actually have a good game. Let's see, we have something here called Satama Puzzle, which looks like it's kind of a Tetris sorting organizing game. It might be a lot like 2048, but slightly different in how you place the pieces. Let's watch the video and see how it actually plays. Put blocks down, and then you get points. But at some point it merge together. And you can like overlap things. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna say I am failing to understand the longevity of a game like this, certainly. But I'll give it a chance and put it on the follow list. Moai Mei Hidden Objects does not really feel like a hidden object game. It's saying more that it's a point and click visual novel. We'll give it a chance, but visually these screenshots don't look amazingly interesting. Here we have a game called Doorman, which just looks like a low effort asset flip. English, French, and Turkish. Yeah, we have a game called Palmas, which looks like garbage. Yeah, we have a game called Specs, which seems like it's a PC building simulator game without the actual PC building simulator part. So more of a management game, running a business. $4.49. Honestly, it's complete fantasy at this point to think that any small person or even a large company, for the most part, is making any real profits or success at building computers and selling computers. If anything, I suspect we will start to see fewer and fewer cell phone companies even exist, which the AT&T, Verizon, Sprint stores, I guess T-Mobile stores now, they were all being subsidized by the monthly recurring fees of having the service. And even in that case, most of those stores barely had one employee in there to try to be a salesman to cell phones. I don't think there's a lot of emphasis at electronic stores, or there are even that many electronic stores in the West selling cell phones. And cell phones are obviously the replacement for the vast majority of people to computers. Here we have a game on Steam called Heroes Book and Paper, which looks a little too old school for my taste. So I'm going to say no to that. Yep. Yeah, as somebody who was in IT, it definitely has occurred to me over my lifetime to think about, could I or should I build computers and try and sell them? And I've always kind of wanted to do it, but I've always known that there was never going to be enough of that. You have to be a pretty specialist repairman where you're charging ridiculous amounts of money, hundreds of dollars an hour, to repair business computers, or you have to have at the very least a lot of business connections where people are going to contract with you to build or sell computers instead of getting cheap computers from like Dell. Something shipped to you that's been assembled by slave labor in China for a lot cheaper. There's far too much of a lie that computers were going to be a major industry and a major job for a vast majority of my generation, and it just didn't happen. Everybody knows how to use a computer, and most people use a computer in their jobs, but that's about as far as it goes. Can I summon something else? Fusion some. See if this works. You discard this. Special summon this. Get rid of this one. I guess that one. It could change this attribute, which won't really, I think, help me that much. That was a pretty stupid summon I did there, but it might work. Here we have a game on Steam called The Last Tater. We have 2 more new games that looks like nothing. And then we have a game called Hell's Delivery, which looks like nothing, and I just realized it's over midnight at this point. Yeah, it was gonna happen. And then we're at the GameDeveloper.com articles. Final Fantasy 15 has sold 10 million copies worldwide. There's a Q&A that they're promoting. Too many of these. CI Games wants to regain full ownership of the indie publisher United label. Which, okay, that makes some sense, but I don't even know what games they've made. Sniper Ghost Warrior. It's not a game I recognize. Right. This one is dark. So if I activate this effect and change it to dark, I still can't do anything there. Still can't do anything there. Let's see. Bungie to improve its game's online safety after the Buffalo, New York terror attack. Bungie is committing to improving the safety online game to prevent online extremism and is urging other companies to do the same. I don't believe, I don't watch the news that much these days, and it makes me a happier person. I don't believe this Buffalo, New York terror attack had anything to do with Destiny, Bungie at all. See, he's an 18-year-old person who allegedly opened fire in a Tops grocery store. Which, yeah, it doesn't really feel like any of that has anything to do with video games. He targeted Buffalo's black community allegedly and planned out. Apparently they were the attacks were allegedly planned out on a social chat platform, Discord, which has really nothing to do with video games, and streamed briefly on Twitch. Just these stories always bending over backwards to blame video games when the narrative has like nothing to do with video games at all, or the story has nothing to do with video games at all. And I just don't see a real value in virtue signaling, for lack of a better term, or promoting censorship, for a better term, and just using a tragedy as an excuse to promote censorship. Let's see. I think this lets me activate this card now. Turn that to the deck. I mean, even if it was a scenario here, and I'm going on a bit of a rant, but it's worth pointing out, if there was a scenario that this person was radicalized, this kid was radicalized, let's face it, 18-year-olds are basically kids, arguably even like 25-year-olds are still kids. If they were radicalized playing a video game in chat, that would be one thing. If he specifically said or gave evidence that he was radicalized playing the game in the chat, that'd be one thing. But this is just another example of Bungie being SJWs instead of either not commenting at all, which I have to side with Sony CEO on that point again, or saying that we felt deeply affected and we have therefore donated money to a mental health cause for people who are at risk of becoming disenfranchised and crazy shooters potentially, at risk youth, or we're gonna support the black community and donate money, even if they were gonna give it to something slightly divisive like Black Lives Matter. Um, Donating money to an actual cause like that costs more money than the lip service that they're paying as far as we're going to push more censorship. And it's been a constant narrative for at least a year where several of the major online games are pushing more and more censorship and more and more restrictive controls in playing the online first-person shooter games. So it's effectively becoming a bait and switch concept where they're trying to bring in an audience just to then bully the audience. And we've seen some percentage of players lose interest in playing those kinds of games because of it. Anyways, not to drag that into a long rant, next GameDeveloper.com article, Saudi Arabia, the Saudi investment fund buys 5% stake in Nintendo. We Are One, Tux and Fanny, and Norco are among the Amaze Awards of 2020. I don't even know what the Amaze Awards are. I also don't know any of these games, really. So these must be fairly small indie games. Which that certainly is another thing that happens quite a lot, is that you'll have a bit of an insane amount of indie games getting praise but really not having any relevancy at all. Let's see. Dr. Jenkin Vela is the new executive director of IGDA, which is, I believe, a sister company or the owner of GameDeveloper.com, so it's not really news there. And then Andreessen Horowitz debuts a $600 million game fund with an eye on Web3, whatever Web3 means. It's almost certainly another buzzword. Here we have a horror game from 2020 that's mostly positive. So I think we can put that on the wish list as far as we quickly go through some follow lists clean up. Sam & Max, this time it's virtual, steadily below the 50% mark at 41% as far as reviews. This one was really poorly received. And it's not developed nor published by Telltale Games, so seems like if this is the company, if Big Sugar or Happy Giant own the rights to Sam & Max outright, they failed miserably in September 10th of 2021 to make a decent game. And it kind of sucks too, because this does look like a different story. It's not just rehashing either the original couple Sam & Max games or the Telltale Sam & Max games. Although arguably, I'm not sure that Sam & Max as a concept isn't just a little played out anyways, and only made sense when it was well written in the first couple of Sam & Max games, and that the Telltale games, being of a different time, were just not written as well and had a different sentimentality to them. And arguably, I would even say that the original Sam & Max games probably wouldn't even be worth mentioning if they came out now. They just had a lot less competition in the old days. So they managed to succeed, I think, a lot better due to that. Whereas Sam and the Max Save the World here is a rehash of the Telltale games, just now in widescreen with slight censorship in a couple places. So this is something that is that was developed and published by Skunk Ape Games, and I suspect they actually own the rights to Sam and Max more than anybody else. And I really wouldn't buy this, but I'll put it on the wish list, I guess, if somebody desperately wanted me to play the remastered version of Sam and Max Save the World. Like, at a certain point, it would be nice if I could make a second wish list that says, if you're a millionaire, buy this, and don't buy it unless you're a millionaire, because it's going to be a waste just to get the newest version. And I almost certainly there would be a new remaster of Sam and Max at some point in the next 30 years, assuming one plans to live that long. Here we have a game called Salute Pie, which I don't think has enough relevancy. Yeah, just no reviews. Came out January 1st, 2021. It's been 2 years. I know the pandemic has messed with the 1 year or 6 months timeline I was giving games to get reviews, but 2 years pretty much says that's enough. This game is mostly negative, so it can leave the following list. We don't have to investigate it any further. Sakura Succubus is mostly positive. And I guess this is, again, something you put on the wish list, but even if somebody was to gift it to me, I wouldn't really be able to make content on it unless I started to be a much bigger YouTuber and had some kind of like Patreon place where I could host videos that was of a more adult content nature, which oddly I think Patreon did put out a announcement focusing in that direction, where they're going to try and have more of a emphasis and focus on adult content and adult support. Let's see. I think you probably want to do these first. Next we have a Sakura MMO Extra, which is not actually an MMO. The entire Winged Cloud Sakura series tend to be lewd but not nude games from Chinese developers. So arguably, at some point in the future, I might swing the exact opposite direction and decide to just get rid of everything that says Sakura. Of course, you have to be careful because then you have adult games like this called Sakura Hime that's from Giri Giri Games, not Winged Cloud. And that game is actually a more adult content focused game. It's rated very positively at $3.99, and I can actually show it off. The screenshots are perfectly tame, relatively speaking. It's not a puzzle game in the sense that you're not just doing jigsaw puzzles, but it honestly doesn't feel like much of a game at all. So yeah, I don't feel like, I think in retrospect, evolving what I think I'd actually cover, I'll just get rid of that game. If I am going to cover adult games, they're going to have to be really, really good ones, very relevant ones for whatever that means as far as adult games. Here we have a VR game called Rydo VR. There's just a ton of videos. Looks like it's a run and gun game with some swordplay in VR. Not a terrible thought, but since it's in VR, I'll leave it on the follow list. And then Saints Row the Third Remastered is totally mixed, so I feel like at this point, just would remove that from the wish list. And yeah, at this point, I just don't know if there's a Saints Row reason to cover the Saints Row series. Apparently, already owned Saints Row the third, the original version. So yeah, didn't get a free update to the remastered, and maybe that's why so many people are upset with it, in that it didn't give that free update. When you look at this trailer, though, look at these characters for Saints Row the Third versus the new reboot of Saints Row. Just look how, yes, there are kind of silly gangsters that all wear purple as kind of their gang color, but there's actual logic to it. People are in like realistic outfits. It's not just total insanity in the visuals in the trailers all the time, compared to the teaser trailers they were showing us for the Saints Row reboot, where every single character looks totally different. Um, so they definitely are taking it up a notch. Of course, also this game looks pretty bad compared to what they're promising in the reboot, as far as just visual fidelity being improved. Um, but more sometimes does not mean better. Yeah, this seems like something that's more realistic and reasonable, whereas the reboot feels like it's going to go off the rails. And then the last game we have here is a game called Saint Kotar, which looks like a point and click. It's mostly positive. It's out of early access, so we will put that on there. There is always a danger that one of these games doesn't have an ending, and I put it on the wish list. It would just behoove me to make sure I make sure that the game has an ending before I actually buy it. And I have yet to be really bitten by having something on the wish list and then realizing, oh, this is an unfinished product that often. It's maybe happened once or twice in buying games over, at least over 300, probably closer to over 1,000 games. Let's see. When does this end? If today is the 19th, we may have like 5 more days. I think that's about it. We got to the mate, and we're at about right here with the Fusion Reward tickets. So now it's just going to be a struggle to get all the Fusion Reward tickets, which are kind of worth it, even though you have to get 1,000 points each time, so 2 victories, and try to get to the Fusion Festival title, which is not really worth it. Playing off screen, yep. Ooh, I have like 3 days. It ends the 22nd, so I do need to really just focus down on this. And again, I'm probably not going to have a lot of time to emphasize or focus on playing ranked or doing anything else. Yeah, I'm trying to take it easy, but with this heat and all, but I need to also feel like I've accomplished something. We are making progress on lifetime achievements, and we're at 7,500. Let's see, we could go ahead and open these, or we can wait till we have a 10 pack. I think we want to wait till we have a 10 pack and just open them all at the end. And then let me just double check my Twitter feed, and then we'll be done for the day. We went 4 hours on Monday. Now we're going 2 hours and 40 minutes, which is way more realistic on Wednesday. Yeah. And I don't think there's going to be any news because I started incredibly late, come to think of it. Alright, so at the end of 2 hours and 40 minutes, once the network started fixing itself, I went from a high of about 60% drop frames down to a low of 14.3% drop frames. As far as rendering frames, there practically are none. So network settings, I'll check them. That's going to be it for the stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to further follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.